Thanks very much indeed. And it's my task to present to you on the COVID-19 vaccine safety monitoring. In the next 10 minutes or so, I will explain why we need monitoring of vaccine safety. I will explain the Vigilance database of suspected adverse drug reaction reports, how regulators look at the reports, what we do if we think there may be new or changing risks for a vaccine, where you can find more information, what studies regulators are undertaking on the safety of the vaccines, and a word on international collaboration. So the question is, safety monitoring of vaccines, why do we do it? Why do we need to monitor safety after approval? Well, all medicines, including vaccines, have benefits and risks. And at the time of approval, evidence comes mainly from controlled randomized clinical trials. In the context of these COVID-19 vaccines, very large clinical trials. After approval, medicines will be used in real conditions in a far larger population. And safety monitoring after approval is important to identify any new or changing risks as quickly as possible, and therefore to be able to take action. Due to the very large numbers of people vaccinated in a short time, we need to ensure that safety monitoring reacts really quickly. And additional resources have been put in place to ensure that our safety monitoring is robust and is rapid so that we can assess new information. This slide gives a visual representation of how safety assurance and safety monitoring is conducted throughout the life cycle of a medicine. And you'll see the blue columns representing the different stages in drug development: pharmaceutical quality, non-clinical, clinical trials, the evaluation and decision, so the marketing authorization evaluation, the manufacturing, and then the post-marketing phase. The pink bars then represent different types of safety monitoring that occur during those different phases. Maybe just to mention that the foundation of safety is ensuring that you have a product of high quality, and that obviously tests demonstrating that occur during drug development, but also with each batch of vaccine released. There are toxicity studies, including non-clinical and animal studies. Then the Vigilance database, the database of suspected adverse drug reaction reports at a European level, starts collecting data even from the clinical trials. Clinical trials themselves may be extended, and particularly safety studies done in the on-market phase. And then if we look collectively at other sources of information, we should exchange information with international regulators. We take publications from the medical literature. There are specific safety studies that the pharmaceutical companies are conducting, as well as studies conducted by the regulators and academia. And critically, we have reports from patients and healthcare professionals, reports of suspected side effects after vaccination. So let's go to the next slide and see how this works. Firstly, let's ask ourselves who's involved in safety monitoring. And you can see from the graphic on the left-hand side of this slide that it's really a collective effort with many different actors involved. Let's start at the top with patients and consumers. In the context of vaccination, consumers is probably the better term. Clearly a very important role in terms of reporting suspected side effects. If we move to healthcare professionals, an important role in terms of following the prescribing information to give the vaccine safely and effectively, and then taking part perhaps in studies, but also again reporting suspected side effects. National healthcare systems to make sure that the systems are in place to collect information. Marketing authorization holders, or otherwise known as manufacturers of the vaccines, who have very important obligations laid down in law for monitoring the safety of their products and passing on any reports of suspected side effects. And finally, regulatory agencies, including the European Medicines Agency and all the national competent authorities in the different member states, who by law have very explicit and clear responsibilities for monitoring the safety of all medicines, including vaccines. If we look at that collectively, we can say that the EU has a comprehensive safety monitoring and risk management system in place, and we refer to this as the EU pharmacovigilance system. So how does the safety monitoring continue after approval? Maybe it's best to start on the right-hand side of the slide and talk about a risk management plan. So a risk management plan is something that is developed and agreed at the time of authorization. It's specifically developed for each approved vaccine and contains important information about the vaccine's safety, how to collect further information, and how to minimize any risks. It's continually updated as more information becomes available, and it's legally binding on the vaccine manufacturer. So if it says that a study needs to be done on safety, then that's legally binding on the manufacturer, and the manufacturer has to conduct this study and report on the results. So that's really important. At the time of authorization, we have a plan for safety that is tailored to each and every vaccine that goes on the market. So now, once a product is on the market, we need to detect or to monitor to see if there are any new or changing side effects. And this monitoring includes intensive analysis of reports of suspected side effects from patients and healthcare professionals, post-authorization safety studies conducted by the manufacturer as well as by the regulators, and additional studies performed in Europe on the safety of vaccines when used in real life. And finally, and as mentioned previously, benefiting from international collaboration, sharing information with our partners around the world. Let's focus in on reports from patients and healthcare professionals and ask ourselves about the European database of suspected adverse reactions to medicines, EudraVigilance. Firstly, note the link, the URL link in the top left-hand corner of the slide, adrreports.eu. If you want to find out more about EudraVigilance, that's the link to go to. It also presents anonymized data that has come in through that reporting system. So if you're interested to look at different types of case report, that's the URL link to go to. So what is EudraVigilance showing us? Well, if we look at reports from patients and healthcare professionals up to the 22nd of March, so a couple of days ago, a total of approximately 220,000 worldwide, I emphasize worldwide, cases of suspected side effects have been received by EudraVigilance following administration with the 3 vaccines in use in Europe, so the Pfizer vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, and the AstraZeneca vaccine. If we then look on the right-hand side here and ask ourselves the question, who has reported, and again, these are worldwide data, not just European data, you can see that there's approximately a 50-50 split between healthcare professionals and non-healthcare professionals. And by non-healthcare professionals, you can read mainly patients. Now, that's really interesting because if you look across all medicines in the EudraVigilance database, you would find a far higher proportion of reports coming from healthcare professionals. In other words, a lower proportion coming from patients. And this is to be expected because these vaccines are being used in healthy people all over Europe. And therefore, you would expect the consumers, if you like, patients and consumers, to be reporting suspected side effects, hence the higher proportion overall. Just to emphasize, and this is a really important message from my presentation, that anyone can report a suspected side effect either to their national competent authority, their national medicines authority, or to the vaccine manufacturer. The link in the middle bullet point gives a whole listing of the national authorities so people can find the authority for them. And all reports having been received by a national authority or a pharmaceutical company will be then sent on by law, all of them, to the EudraVigilance database, the European database of suspected side effects. This slide shows the most commonly reported side effects into the EudraVigilance database for these COVID-19 vaccines. And the size of the box is proportionate to the number of reports that we've received. And you can see that we have received most headache, followed by fever, muscle pain, chills, nausea, fatigue, joint pain, generally feeling unwell, injection site pain, and dizziness. These commonly reported side effects are already known. They're all listed in the summary of product characteristics because they were all seen in clinical trials. The point of this slide is to put the reports of suspected side effects into the context of the use of the vaccines. And if we so here we have numbers of suspected side effects the usage, and these are European data, so European Economic Area data, EU plus Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. And the sources are given in the bottom right-hand corner. So the vaccines administered are taken from the ECDC data, and you can find those on the ECDC website. And the suspected side effects you can see from the ADR reports website, which is run by EMA. So let's start on the left-hand side then with Comirnaty, the Pfizer vaccine. It was authorized on the 21st of December. Approximately 42 million EU citizens or EA citizens have received at least one dose, and we've received 94,000 reports of suspected side effects. If we then go to Moderna, authorized on the 6th of January, only 2.6 million Europeans have received a dose, and 4,550 reports of suspected adverse drug reactions as of the 22nd of March. And then finally, AstraZeneca, authorized on the 29th of January, 9.2 million European citizens have received at least one dose, 28,041 suspected side effects. Let's go and have a bit more of a detailed look. Let's go to the next slide. So firstly, let's ask ourselves, how do we look at these reports? And particularly, how do we know if a suspected side effect is due to the vaccine? So the EU regulatory authorities carefully review all reports to determine if there's any possible link to the vaccine. But it's important to remember that since millions of people will be getting the vaccine in a short time, as shown on the last slide, many of them will develop illnesses for other reasons in close proximity to vaccination. If these occurred very soon after vaccination, then they may well be reported as suspected reactions to the vaccine, when the association actually was just due to chance. Of course, if the analysis concludes that a new side effect is caused by a vaccine, then we will take action and we will include it in the package leaflet. And I'll go on to talk in a subsequent slide about other actions we might take. So we talked about trying to differentiate adverse events happening by chance from potential side effects. How do we do this? Well, we have established analysis techniques in place to assess whether a side effect is likely to be caused by the vaccine. Firstly, and critically, there's intensive clinical review of cases reported by consumers and healthcare professionals to ascertain a possible link with the vaccines. So how quickly after the vaccination did it occur? Are there any clinical features that are common to a series of cases, for example? We then use statistical methods to identify outliers or patterns of reported side effects in our database. And then we try and compare to data from everyday medical practice, so-called real-world data, to ascertain whether the suspected side effect, for example, one in close proximity to vaccination, was just due to chance. And here we do something called observed versus expected analysis, where we can calculate from the real-world data how many cases we would expect to see in the background population compared to how many we have seen following vaccination. And together, these are some of the key methods we use to establish and analyze. Let's look at this in a slightly different way, and let's take the assumption that we have a suspected side effect reported after administration of a vaccine. So I'm starting now at the top of the circle, and we're going to go around clockwise. So if we have a suspected side effect, an issue to be analyzed, there's a scientific assessment that looks at the suspected side effects in the context of the person's individual case to determine if it may have been caused by the vaccine or occur for other reasons. The side effects, if we then go to the bottom, the side effects are assessed in the context of all available data on the vaccine. So we'll look at the clinical trials data, we'll look at other studies, we'll look at the scientific literature. And then we will reach a conclusion on that particular side effect and put it into the wider context of the overall benefits and risks of the vaccine. So let's assume that the conclusion is that the benefits continue to outweigh the risks, but that there is a new or changing risk. This could lead to a restriction in the use of the vaccine, a contraindication, or warnings, for example, to screen or to do tests by the healthcare professional prior to vaccination. Just a few examples of what we might do. If the conclusion is that the risks outweigh the benefit, then the vaccine will be removed from the market. Now let's go in the next three slides, one by one, through the three vaccines that are being used on the European market at the moment. Let's start with Comirnaty, so the BioNTech Fisa vaccine, and these data are as of the 22nd of March, and they relate to the European Economic Area. So as mentioned before, 42 million vaccinated, 94,000 suspected side effects. The identified risks, the risks that are already labeled, include severe allergic reactions, including anaphylaxis, facial paralysis or palsy, fever, headache, muscle pain, injection site swelling, and vomiting and diarrhea are in the process of being added to the product information at the moment. Under assessment by the Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee, so the EMA Committee on Safety, is immune thrombocytopenia, thrombotic events, and localized swelling in persons with a history of dermal filler injections. These are the data for the Moderna vaccine. Again, data lock of 22nd of March, European Economic Area. Identified risks are very similar. Severe allergic reactions, including anaphylaxis, facial paralysis or palsy, fever, headache, muscle, joint pain, injection site swelling, nausea, vomiting, and facial swelling in patients with a history of dermal fillers. And under PRAC, so Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee, immune thrombocytopenia and thrombotic events. These are the data for the AstraZeneca vaccine. Again, 22nd of March data log, European Economic Area, 9.2 million vaccines administered in the EA, 28,000 suspected side effects. Identified risks, again, similar. Severe allergic reactions, including anaphylaxis, headache, fever, muscle and joint pain, injection site swelling, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. And under assessment, immune thrombocytopenia and thrombotic events. Let's talk now about those thrombotic events, because I think most people on this webinar will be aware that there was a very important safety review by the Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee where interim conclusions were reached last Thursday. So the PRAC concluded its preliminary review of cases of blood clots with the AstraZeneca vaccine and confirmed that the vaccine is not associated with an increase in the overall risk of blood clots, and that the benefits in combating the still widespread threat of COVID-19 continue to outweigh the risks of side effects. PRAC recommended including information and advice for healthcare professionals and the public in the vaccine's product information, and the amended product information is available on the EMA website on very rare cases of thrombosis associated with thrombocytopenia, so blood clots associated with low platelets. PRAC is continuing its assessment into the reported cases. We have convened an ad hoc expert group, which will meet on the 29th of March to provide additional input. And this includes several specialists, as well as 2 representatives of the general public. The outcome of that expert meeting, together with further analysis of reported cases, will be fed into PRAC's ongoing evaluation. And we foresee the potential for an updated recommendation from PRAC at its April plenary meeting, which takes place from the 6th to the 9th of April. Very briefly, if you want to find more information about the safety of each of the COVID-19 vaccines, then links are provided on the slide. And if you look at the screenshot from the EMA website, it orientates you as to where to go and to click. You can find a medicines overview addressing questions and answers in lay language, which is available in all EU languages, importantly. Risk management plan can also be scrutinized, and recommendations and precautions to be followed for healthcare professionals are in the summary of product characteristics, and for patients in the patient leaflet. Again, available in all EU languages on the EMA website. Let's go to the next slide. So very briefly, there are additional safety studies going on at European level, and the EMA and the national competent authorities are collaborating with academia to make this happen. So firstly, at the end of last year, we put in place something we refer to as the early safety monitoring study. This is in people prioritized for vaccination. It collects data through web-based applications currently in 8 countries, and will run right through 2021 collecting data on safety. In addition, we are expanding on that to start collecting data, not just from more patients in more member states, but also drilling down into special populations, including pregnant women. And we're also putting in place specific studies for special populations. Again, I mentioned pregnant women, and we have the potential to do dedicated studies to look at specific areas of concern if safety signals arise. Go to the next slide. This last slide just highlights the international collaboration, which is very extensive and very important to our safety monitoring. We have established an international pharmacovigilance network under the auspices of the International Coalition of Medicines Regulatory Authorities, ICMRA, where there is sharing of experience and communication on vaccines, both pharmacovigilance activities, but also emerging issues. We also have international collaboration with international partners, again under the auspices of ICMRA, on pregnancy research, and we are building international cohorts, including an important study on the disease epidemiology of thrombosis, which occurs in COVID-19 disease. These are my conclusions. Vaccination is important to prevent people getting sick with COVID-19 disease. Vaccination will save lives. Fewer people are expected to go to hospital, reducing the burden on the healthcare system and freeing up resources to treat other illnesses. A strong EU pharmacovigilance system is in place and safety is our priority. Unprecedented steps are being taken to monitor safety in practice, to be transparent and to be able to take action immediately. And I think we would like to conclude by saying COVID-19 vaccine safety is stronger with everybody's participation. And our take-home message is if you see or experience a potential side effect, then please report it. Thank you very much.